Hello students, today we are going to talk about the aims and objectives of higher education, and the objectives set for today's talk are to get acquainted with history and evolution of higher education, to become familiar with the concept of higher education, to get an insight into the aims and objectives of higher education as put forward by various commissions appointed from time to time, and lastly, we will try to know about the general aims and objectives as prescribed for the development of higher education. The Indian education system has come a long way from the days of Gurukul, Pathshalas, in the ashrams of rishis or gurus or learned people, where students used to go and stay with the gurus till they were educated or gained a certain amount of skills and knowledge. Today, there are government-funded schools, including residential schools in remote and rural areas, and privately managed public schools. The post-independence era has seen the expansion of education in all dimensions, at all levels, which is primary, secondary, and higher. Expansion of higher education has been phenomenal during the last 5 decades. The manifold quantitative expansion of higher education facilities have fulfilled many goals and produced manpower required for various sectors. Let us have a look over the history and evolution of higher education. Indian higher education has a long history with universities like Nalanda and Takshashila. However, the modern system can be traced back to the establishment of 3 universities at Mumbai, Kolkata, and Chennai in 1857. Lord Elphinstone, Lord Macaulay, and Sir Charles Wood were the early pioneers of modern system of education in our country. The British promoted higher education to produce manpower which suits the colonial administration. After independence in 1947, priorities for national development were drawn up, and accordingly the objectives of higher education were formulated and the system was expanded and developed. The Indian higher education system is one of the highly reviewed subjects by various committees and commissions from time to time. The major ones were University Education Commission 1948-49, Education Commission 1964-66, and New Education Policy 1986. The Inter-University Board, later known with the name Association of Indian Universities, was established in 1925 to promote university activities by sharing information and cooperation in the field of education, culture, sports, and allied areas. The first attempt to formulate a national system of education came in 1944 with the report of Central Advisory Board of Education on post-war educational development in India, also known as Sargent Report. It recommended the formation of a University Grants Committee, which was formed in 1945 to oversee the work of the 3 central universities of Aligarh, Banaras, and Delhi. In 1947, the committee was entrusted with the responsibility of dealing with all the then existing universities. Soon after independence, the University Education Commission was set up in 1948 under the chairmanship of Dr. S. Radhakrishnan, and the Commission recommended that the University Grants Committee to be reconstituted on the general model of University Grants Commission of the United Kingdom, with a full-time chairman and other members to be appointed from amongst educationists of repute. And in 1952, the Union government decided that all cases pertaining to the allocation of great grants in aid from public funds to the Central University and other universities and institutions of higher learning might be referred to the University Grants Commission. Consequently, the University Grants Commission was formally inaugurated by late Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, the then Minister of Education, on 28 December 1953. In 1956, under the University Grants Commission Act of the Parliament, the UGC became a statutory body. Also, Government of India constituted National Assessment and Accreditation Cell, NAC 1996, to look after the standards of higher education. The leaders of nationalist movement recognized that education is the tool to lift our masses from the misery of poverty and ignorance. Pandit Nehru, while delivering a speech at the special convocation of the Allahabad University on December 13, 1947, said, "A university stands for humanism, for tolerance, for reason, for progress, for the adventure of ideas, and for the search of truth. It stands for the onward march of human race towards even higher objectives. If the universities discharge their duty adequately, then it's well with the nation and the people. But if the temple of learning itself becomes a home of narrow bigotry and petty objectives, how then will the nation prosper or people grow in stature?" These commissions, committees, and groups reviewed higher education from time to time and suggested measures for improvement of various aspects. Let us talk about concept of higher education in Indian perspective. Higher education, post-secondary education, tertiary education, or third level of education is an optional final stage of formal learning that occurs after secondary education. It is often delivered at universities, academies, colleges, seminars, and institutes of technology. Higher education is also available through certain college level institutions, including vocational schools, trade schools, and other colleges that award academic degree or professional certificates. We can also define it as the education imparted at post-secondary level in educational institutions which are open to students who have successfully completed secondary education or reached an equivalent level. For example, universities, institutes of technology, and higher commercial colleges and other institutes which confer degrees or diplomas of a level substantially equivalent to university degree. This education is usually much specialized in nature. The various programs are directed to particular disciplines and related areas. Thus, higher education is the synonym of university, an authority to issue a license for grant of a degree or certificate after completion of a particular course. Aims and objectives of higher education. The objectives of higher education may range from primary objectives such as employability, enhancing the earning potential, seeking and advancing knowledge and wisdom, research and experimentation, to more serious secondary objectives like attaining mental and spiritual growth, engaging in quest for the unknown, facilitating better lifestyle, and developing scientific outlook. The aims and objectives of higher education can better be understood from the viewpoints of Radhakrishnan Commission, Indian Education Commission, and National Policy on Education, respectively. Aims and objectives of higher education according to University Education Commission 1948-49. Radhakrishnan Commission, also known as University Education Commission, laid down certain aims of university education, keeping in view the past traditions, the present conditions, and the future prospects of the country. The aims and objectives of higher education as laid by the Commission are to provide highly trained professionals to meet the needs of government, the professions, and the productive and service sectors, or who can take up national responsibilities successfully in various fields like administration, commerce, trade, agriculture, industry, etc. Developing an intellectual attitude towards things and encouraging growth of knowledge and wisdom among the youth. Thus, universities should produce such wise persons who may disseminate learning and make a search for new knowledge. Emphasizing social reform through the creation of foresighted, intelligent, and courageous leadership. To educate well-aware, autonomous, and responsible citizens committed to national and universal principles, capable of dealing with the challenge of the century and of lifelong learning, encouraging universities to play their part as organs of culture and the intellectual leaders on civilization. University education aims at producing intellectuals who will be able to direct, guide, preserve, and revive our national culture and civilization. University education also aims at creating a consciousness among the students for protecting the directive principles as laid down in Constitution and thus making an endeavor for the success of democracy. It aims to instill higher values among the students. The greatness of a country does not depend on the extent of its territory, the length of its communication, or the amount of its wealth, but on the love for higher values. It is the university which has to play a role in inculcating moral values like thought for the poor and sufferings, regard and respect for others, faith in brotherhood, regardless of race, color, religion, etc. Aims and objectives of higher education as laid down by Indian Education Commission 1964-66. The aims and objectives of higher education as laid by the Indian Education Commission are to seek and cultivate new knowledge, to engage vigorously and fearlessly in the spirit of truth, and to interpret old knowledge and beliefs in the light of new needs and discoveries. To provide right leadership in all walks of life, to identify gifted youth and to develop them in developing their potential to the fullest by cultivating physical fitness, right interests, attitudes and morals, and intellectual values. To provide society with competent men and women trained in agriculture, arts, medicine, science, technology, and various other professions, who will also be cultivated individuals imbued with a sense of social justice. To foster in the teachers and students, and through them in the society, generally the attitude and values needed for developing the good life. Reducing social and cultural disparities. Working for the development of a national consciousness. Developing the programs for adult education. Aims and objectives of higher education as viewed by National Policy on Education 1986. Higher education provides people with an opportunity to reflect on the critical social, economic, cultural, moral, and spiritual issues facing humanity. It contributes to national development through dissemination of specialized knowledge and skill. Being at the apex of educational pyramid, it has also a key role in producing teachers for the education system. The Radhakrishnan Commission, Kothari Commission, and National Policy on Education conception of these ideals are inspired by the desire to translate the dreams of building a new India into a concrete reality. And it's undoubtedly true that our objectives cannot be high in the absence of glorious and laudable ideals. The objective of higher education have a universal validity because it is through higher education that intellect of nation can be used in the international sphere for the betterment of the whole human race. In consonance with this, in India too, the same objectives have been prescribed for the development of higher education. These objectives include obtaining new knowledge and nurturing it, searching for truth with courage and complete dedication, elaborating traditional knowledge and beliefs in the light of new needs and discoveries, providing the right kind of leadership in every sphere of life, recognizing the talents of young men and women, developing their potential abilities, training them in physical and mental health, and inculcating in them the desired attitudes and healthy interests, and the right moral and intellectual values. giving to society educated individuals who have received training in agriculture, arts, medicine, science and technology and various other techniques, and who are also infused with social responsibility. In other words, giving society truly cultured individuals. Encouraging equality and social justice through the spread of education and seeking to reduce social and cultural differences. Generating and nurturing in students and teachers, and through them in the whole society, the values and attitudes which are required for the true life, both by the society and by the individual. For fulfillment of these universal objectives, the Kothari Commission has formulated an outline of various programs based on the certain foundation, including total reform in higher education and research from the viewpoint of quality and standards, development of higher education for the purpose of fulfilling the aspirations and ambitions of the people to some extent so as to meet thereby the manpower needs of national development. Reforms in the organization of universities. These objectives and programs offer a strong challenge for the higher education in India. Thus, we may conclude by saying that higher education is essential for any country to achieve sustainable and global development. It is also essential for the enhancement of citizens' participation in public life, for social mobility and for achievement of harmony, justice at both internal and international levels. Getting a degree in any discipline or disciplines is not the end of it. It must be lifelong, making all people lifelong learners by giving birth to a learning society for better governance and peace. Thus, it is not the end in itself for an individual who takes and completes the course. As Pandit Nehru has expressed, that university exists for humanism, intellectual courage and search for truth. It aims at preparing the human race to strive for higher goals. The happiness of both the nation and the people lies in the fact that universities should continue to fulfill their obligations with success. With this we conclude. Hope you have enjoyed. Goodbye.